Okay, so today we're going to work with research project. I have already sent out the material to Ida. She will share with all the students the material for essay writing, right, Ida?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. And then, based on the material that you receive, you should try to write a paragraph for our next meeting, okay? So that we can kind of like work on that paragraph. So today we're going to be dealing with the research project. The research project, let's get started here. So the first step is understanding that TBE, it is part of what we're going to discuss when it comes to research project. So TBE, it is writing in other disciplines. So what does this mean? It's an in-depth consideration of a topic or research question. So, hold on, I have the wrong slide set. Just get this right. Oh, forgive me, this never happened before, but today it happened. To have the wrong slide set for the class. This is not good. Now I got it. It seems that technology plays some tricks on us sometimes, right?
TB, I think, was our last session with Daniel.
That's it. That's the last
Teaching
session. Yeah.
business. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And
the
it was
next
hard
one.
for me.
There we go. Now research project. So
Okay.
getting started. That's the right set. Okay. So when we talk about research project, we want, when it says presents an original thesis statement, that does not mean that the topic is original. The original topic, you're going to save it for your PhD thesis, let's suppose. This research paper, it is a research paper to show that you have learned the procedures and understood the procedures to teach a foreign language, regardless of foreign language, if it's English or Spanish. So when we say original thesis statement, that's how you are going to discuss the topic. The topic is not original, but how you are going to discuss it. What approach, what analysis are you going to make in this paper? You will always consider primary and secondary sources. We're going to discuss the difference between these. And of course, the intention of all research papers, it is to contribute somehow to the field. So even if I don't teach Spanish, but if I read a paper about teaching Spanish in a language that I can read, like English, it will be helpful somehow. The idea is that whatever you develop will contribute to teachers' reflection, to procedures on how to perform a task, even if it's a case study that you're reporting how you approached it in your class, how you developed it. It is already valuable. Now, it is similar to an essay. However, it is longer, and in this case, you must cite your sources. In the essay, you don't need to cite sources. It will access not only your writing skills, but also your skills as a researcher. Are you able to support your point? Are you able to bring, relevant information that will support what you support your thesis statement? In order to develop a good research paper, you really have to narrow down. You can't go too broad. If you go too broad, you won't be able to accomplish it as a research paper. It's going to become a master thesis, a PhD thesis. So that's why it's very important to narrow down what you're going to discuss. There are some stages. You're going to start with research and planning, then the writing, then the revision. So before you get started, the first step. Oh, there's Eileen. Here we go. Let me wait for her.
So sorry, can I ask something?
Of course.
So at this point, you said you have to narrow down the subject. So even in the beginning of our project, we don't need to, get the whole idea, a general idea.
You can make kind of like you can lay out like a panorama, a broad view. Yes, you can. A broad view. And then the broad view will help you narrow down to your topic.
Oh,
Okay? Very well. Hi, Eileen.
Hello, sorry, I'm late. I had
Don't
an
worry, we're
appointment.
just getting started.
Okay,
So
thank
today
you.
we're going to discuss a research paper. I will also present the topics that you have in Canvas. But regardless the topic that you choose, writing your paper has to follow certain procedures and method. It has a specific method. So that's why first I'm going to show you this method, and then we're going to discuss a little bit about the 4 topics that are proposed for you to develop in Canvas. So we always have to carefully read the assignment goal. You will see that some of them there is a minimum and maximum page count, the deadline, the format. What format are you going to use? MLA, what are you going to use? And of course the submission method, hard copy, digital copy. So all of this, it's part already of developing a research paper. So be sure that you have time, which is something I know very valuable for us teachers and rare, but you have to understand the assignment, the rubric, how is it going to be graded in Canvas, it explains, and of course, any other materials that you have received. For example, there is the Canvas teaching handbook that is very helpful, principally for you, to understand the grading, the rubric. You should make a list in order for you to develop your research paper. So you're going to identify all of this information, and then you're going to start to consider what you're going to write about. Always consider your time frame, word limit, and be realistic. It's better to choose a simple topic that you will be able to develop with appropriate methods for research than to try to go too big and out of your scope that will demand a lot of research that you do not have the time. So it's preferable to do a topic that is connected to your practice, to your passion, than to try to do something too complex that you just won't have the time to go and do the research needed for it. It's not that you can't do it. No, you can, but the time frame. So narrow down and be sure to work within your scope of knowledge. So you have to clearly define and narrow down your topic. The guidelines, as I said, each topic has specific guidelines of page count and so on. Sometimes you're given a list of choices, which is your case. Sometimes you have the freedom to choose. Remember, consider what was covered in this course, because then you have a lot of reference material. And of course, follow your heart, passion, and curiosity. It's virtually and totally impossible to write something that you're not passionate about. It takes away time from very valuable, moments for you to do something that you're not passionate about. So the research, the purpose is to investigate and understand all of the different viewpoints and schools of thought on your topic. So if you're going to be discussing teaching methodologies and you're going to narrow it down to a case study on how you presented a specific topic in a specific group, and you use, let's suppose, grammar translation and communicative approach, you're going to have to explain your choices. Why did you choose? What is the justification that you chose those methods to develop this task? Of course, you have previous knowledge of your group. When I teach adults, I always work with translation. They're more comfortable. So that's a very important point. As a teacher, we want our learners to be comfortable and open to learning. So even if I have to go back to the grammar translation method, I will rescue myself and use the grammar translation method. Always do research in books and journals and reliable sources. Now, sometimes we find some really nice stuff online, like good blogs and stuff like that. But a blog is not like an official, document. However, you can use it kind of like to illustrate your point and then bring in, you know, theory to support it. So it can be a source of inspiration. You can do that. You just cannot use material that is not, academic to present as theory. You can present it to illustrate your point, to support your point, and then you bring in, a theory support. Always,
Sorry,
yeah,
do we
Ida?
mention, do we mention that in our references?
Yes, and the references as well. And also in your writing, you make it clear that the purpose of discussing this article published in the blog is due to the fact that it inspired my curiosity or something like that as a researcher, which led me to then, research uh, original and sources and theories to back up. So that you do that, okay? It's fine. And then you will consider a variety of perspectives. That's another thing. Nowadays, it's very common to write analysis, comparative analysis. So you take a topic and you can discuss two ways that it could be presented and talk about the pros and cons, pros and cons. So that's a very, it's a big trend nowadays to compare how specific topics could be taught with different approaches. And always keep notes of sources and details and useful quotations. So you should start by organizing a file in your computer. In the file, it's research paper, and then material to read, material read. When you're reading the material, even if it's a PDF nowadays, you can use those, tools of highlight and making notes. So all of that, it's really important because when you go back to your sources, it's already highlighted and the important points are there. You don't have to reread the whole article again. Now, what is the difference of primary and secondary sources? So the primary sources, they are first-hand evidence. So they would be like transcripts, historical documents, statistical data, works of art or literature. So they are the original, the real thing, let's say. The secondary sources, they are texts that discuss similar topics, similar, they will discuss the similar topic that you are doing research. And usually the secondary sources, they are based on the primary sources. So let's suppose you find a nice article that also presents, you have decided that you want to introduce numbers and the function of numbers, how to teach children 3 to 5, a group of 3 to 5 numbers. So maybe we would think of like, the physical approach, you would think of the direct approach. So you found an article that discusses this. So this is a valuable article for you because you can analyze how the teacher or how the author, reports and develops the procedures. You can then analyze and see if you would repeat it or not. If you decide to repeat it, that is valid as well to confirm that those steps can be applied in any group and not only to a specific group. So that is the purpose. That's why when you write a research paper, it has to be written in a way that if another, researcher decides to apply the same method in the same circumstances, it has to have the same results. Now, of course, in teaching language, this won't happen. We never have two, conditions that are identical. So we rarely will we get exactly the same results, even if we follow step by step. So that's something. Why? Because our audience, they are different. Even if you have the same age, the same country, the same everything, but they are different individuals. So the results will be different, which is very different from a lab research. Lab research, they are much more controlled. So rarely will you be able to apply the same. You can apply, but you won't obtain the same results. So let's suppose you're writing a paper for a literature class. Now, which of these sources would be primary and which would be secondary?
The Cambridge Journal article. The first one can be primary, I guess.
Okay, the Cambridge Companion to Victorian Novel.
Jane A.
Jane
Primary.
Eyre?
Yeah, primary.
Okay.
No, the first one is not primary. The first one is secondary.
Why not? There you go.
Yeah, because some researchers at the university, they just made some paper from other places and just they got it together. So it cannot be, the original one. But I think number 2 and number 3 can be original.
There you go. So primary sources, Jane Eyre and the Nightingale. And of course, the secondary, like you said, a group of researchers got together, developed based on Victorian's novels. They maybe found characteristics that are similar, and they discuss the elements of Victorian novels. And of course, a journal article is not a primary source. So ideally, to develop a good research, we use both, okay? Now, there is what we call the CRAP test. So the CRAP test is very helpful for us to see if the topic that we have chosen is appropriate. So the C stands for currency. So that means the information that you're using to write your article, is it up to date? Now, for instance, if we take our area, we know that there are very important documents and writings that come from like the 70s, the 80s, because they are the primary sources when applied linguistics was starting to be discussed and it was still something uncertain and unknown. So these readings and this original writing where everything started, it isn't up to date, but it is relevant. Okay, so then you see, is it relevant to your research? So one will complement kind of the other. Now, of course, if we're going to talk about teaching methodologies, we can't be stuck in the grammar translation method, right? Because that's not up to date. But if we're going to discuss how it was, how those big writers implemented and started to discuss applied linguistics, it's relevant to a certain extent. Now, the authority, where is it published and who is the author? As I said, okay, a blog, not really authority, not really recognized as academic, but is it relevant? So then it's valid. So sometimes an element will not be in conformity with one of the points of CRAP, one of the, list of CRAP, but it will be for another. Accuracy, where does the information come from? Is evidence provided? So of course, when you're reading your document and the source that you're using, are the sources cited? Can you check that? And purpose, why is this information published? So always understanding if what you're reading, there is a purpose to that. The author, what was the intention? What was the goal, the objective of writing that paper? Which also you should analyze in yours. Why are you writing your paper? What is the purpose of this paper? Is it to contribute? Is it to analyze? Is it to compare? Is it to simply, illustrate a case study that you have decided to write about? Before you start writing, have a clear idea of the structure. That's an outline. Kind of like you should try to make a little summary, of topics and headings that you would use. So kind of like have your skeleton. It's an outline, a skeleton. So in the introduction, you're going to briefly discuss the background of methodology, and then you're going to narrow it down to a case study that you're going to discuss in this paper, and then you're going to describe the context, you're going to describe the procedures, you're going to describe the outcomes, and your conclusion. Okay, so you have this little, like a little skeleton that you will just then fill in. It is so helpful when you do this before starting a research paper. You won't feel that you have no direction. Identifying what is your goal. So coming back here now, why is this information published? Identifying why you're going to publish will help you also search for references. Because why are you publishing this? Is it to contribute? Is it to compare? Is it, once you do that, that's going to help you define your thesis statement as well. Once you have a thesis statement, you're ready to go. But you will only have a thesis statement after you have done some thinking, that you have done a little outline, some reading. We're going to get there. Now, formulating a thesis statement. It has to state your central argument. What is the purpose and what is the position? So why are you doing this research, and where do you as a researcher stand? Do you support this? Are you investigating it? Are you still, trying to identify if you're still in the investigation process, it's not an invalid paper, but you have to inform the reader. And in your conclusions, you're going to explain that, no, it wasn't possible yet to draw a final conclusion because this is a process of investigation that requires further research and so on. But this analysis or this paper, we're able to conclude this. Okay, does it answer your research question? What are you trying to answer? What makes you, what really, sparks your curiosity in teaching? What would you like to do better? What would you like to reflect about? So this is your research question. Concise, coherent. Eileen, do you have a question?
Excuse me. Where is the research question? Could I to find it?
Yeah, I will show the research questions that you have, but regardless of the topic that is given, you have to elaborate your research question. You have to have one. So the research question is going to be based on something that sparks your curiosity in teaching, or could this have been done different, or was this applied appropriately if you're going to report and discuss a case study. So were the procedures appropriate for the group? You need to have something, a question to guide you. Why are you writing that? Without a research question, there's no purpose to your writing. So you need a question. So for example, I'm writing a research paper now to understand how blended learning is beneficial in upper education to teach English as a foreign language. So look how I narrowed down. I'm researching how blended learning can contribute to teaching English in upper education in a technology course and teaching English as a foreign language. So it's really narrowed down. So then I'm comparing. I decided to use a comparison. I'm taking results of students before using blended learning and after using blended learning in a specific topic. I chose to discuss how they learned the structure there to be. So how was this? Because in class, before blended learning, I introduced the topic in class. I attributed exercises, they did. After blended learning, what did I do? Some of the tasks that I attribute online, they are scored. So then the student is more interested in doing additional activities because it will contribute to a better score, which means that he will review the content again. Of course, the results are much better, right? So there is all of a context that I'm doing. I'm going to analyze several different content. So there is to be, then I'm going So I'm going to present several, but I'm working with results, statistics. And how do I find the result? I applied oral tests in both groups. And then through the oral tests, I was able to evaluate if the student, how much he had learned, his competence or not. So it is a case study, but it's very narrowed down. And that's the article that I'm writing right now. So what is my research question? To what extent does blended learning contribute to teaching English as a foreign language in a technology course, in a college, in an upper education technology course? That is my research question. And then how am I going to support my answer? I'm going to say, yes, it does. And then I'm going to compare before blended, after blended. And as an additional point, I'm also asking students, I'm thinking of doing a survey with the students, of their perspective of using, because some of these students that I have nowadays, they did not have blended learning and now they have. So maybe also see their perspective. You see, when I analyze different perspectives, I'm analyzing the teacher's perspective, the student's perspective, and I may even do a survey to send to the dean or to the coordinator, something, to see if there was also there was an impact. So that is doing a research paper, but it's very narrow. What is my theory? I'm based on blended learning. I'm based on student, participation. So active learning is part of my theory, because in blended learning, active learning is part of the deal, as it would be in traditional classroom, but the motivation is different. The students aren't motivated to participate, to be so active as when they are in online context with the blended. So but I had an outline, I designed an outline. So let's take a thesis statement here of a topic that is completely out, not teaching languages. Look at this. So sugar consumption. I want to talk about sugar consumption. Is this very broad to discuss? Oh my God, you can write 20 theses on this, right?
Yeah, much
It's
easier
a
than
there you
teaching
go.
English.
It's a general subject. But my
Yeah.
concern, in fact, it came because I observed once when I was picking up my eldest son from school, and I realized that many children were overweight. And that's a serious concern, right? And so it started like this. Elementary school children are consuming far more sugar than is healthy. Is that why they are, overweight? Is that what leads to being overweight? So do you think that, my first question would be, reducing sugar consumption by elementary school children, would this be, valid? Would this be a solution to overweight? And then I extend a little bit more. More attention should be paid to food and beverage choices available to elementary school children. So, because full-time school, the kids eat in school, right? So they eat, they drink, they do everything there. So at the end, I start with sugar consumption. I narrow it down thinking of elementary school children because that was what triggered my, my investigation. And then I say, okay, so one way to solve this is to reduce. But how can we reduce this? And then well, then more attention should be paid to food and beverage choices available to elementary school children. So then, based on this thesis statement, now I can make my question. So my question could be, to what extent can controlling the food and beverage offered in schools or available to elementary school children contribute to reducing sugar consumption? Because overweight was that last line, which I'm not very competent, but I am competent maybe to discuss how to reduce sugar, because I'm able then to base myself on information. Reducing sugar, my position is that it will help to avoid overweight, of course. But this is only a preliminary idea. But the thesis statement here is reducing sugar consumption by elementary school children. And my question would be something like, should more attention be paid to food and beverage choices available to elementary school children? Here we go. Work-life balance. This is a general subject. How could we narrow down this work-life balance?
We can start with, seeing some of our co-workers at work, which are, workaholic, and they don't have any, fun in their, they are kind of depressed, and it comes to our mind that, they are not balancing their work and their life. So it can go, it's a little bit narrowed down, and then give a.
So now I can clearly see that you want to discuss the harm that being a workaholic can cause to an individual, because there is lack of work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
That would be your discussion, in fact. So you start off with something that triggers you, and from that trigger, from that spark, you kind of like start to design. So, okay, so workaholic is not good. People that are workaholics, they can get sick. Okay, so what harm can come to those who are workaholics, right?
Yeah.
So
Sorry,
that would be, yeah.
do we write our concerns or the things that trigger the trigger? Do we mention it in our writing?
It's nice. Nowadays, it's become a trend because it shows the authenticity, that it's authentic, that it's original. You see, it's an original thought. It's how you analyze. It's your perspective as a writer. And of course, all of this, you're going to support that. You're not going to just, lay it out there and not go back to it. That
But
is something that's why.
doesn't it make the essay a little bit more personal? Is it okay?
Not personal. It shows the analysis of a researcher. Okay, it's not like I feel. That's not what you're not going to use these words, but you're going to use words such as, okay, considering workaholic as a disease and the harm that it can cause. So that you're going to use then language that is not I feel.
Exactly. Or we. Yeah,
There
great.
you go. That's it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, your position, from what I feel, is that definitely something has to be done to avoid this dark place, right, of workaholic, right? So work-life balance is the solution. So how can work-life balance, or how can a workaholic, include in his routine a work-life balance, right?
Great. Thank you.
That would be the research question. Okay, guys. Now, it can be, look, this is one, because there are so many ways that this could be approached. So work from home opportunities and 6-hour work days will improve productivity when employees are in the office. So I defend, my analysis is that working from home, reducing the work hour to 6 hours will in fact improve productivity when employees are in office. Now, so my thesis statement would be something like corporations should provide more work from home opportunities and 6-hour workdays so that office workers have a better work-life balance and are more likely to be productive when they are in the office. So then my backup theory here would be linked to productivity, to human resources. I would have to go, in human resources, how maybe even like surveys with employees or employers. So all of this, surveys support your point of view, always. Even if the survey is contrary to what you support, it's still valid, okay? So surveys are and nowadays with surveys, you can do them online. It's like when I did my PhD, I interviewed 110, participants. Well, they first filled out a form, okay, a questionnaire, a survey. Then I selected a few with different, answers, and I did then interviews with them, recording the interviews, extracting the information. Nowadays, no, you do this all online. You can, and the Google Docs already provides you with charts and results. So this is awesome to help support your points. So let's take one here. School uniforms may be an upfront cost for families, but they eradicate the visual differences in income between students and provide a more egalitarian atmosphere at school. So this is a thesis statement. Now, based on this, I'm going to bring evidence. I'm going to, once again, here I'm going to use social backup as theory, social discrimination. There's a lot of material here to support my thesis. And once
Excuse
again,
me.
surveys.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Hi, Eileen,
Uh,
yes.
Yes. Is that our topics depend on our personal topic or already decided for us?
Yes, you have 4 topics to choose from, okay? But regardless the topic that you choose, these are steps that you will have to take. So in a few minutes, we're going to go into the 4 options that you have. We will discuss them, okay?
Sorry,
So
I missed it.
no, don't worry. It's because I saw you arrived late and I did not repeat the information. Don't worry. So
Okay.
in the yeah, questions?
No, that it's
No?
okay.
In the introduction, you're going to introduce the topic, key terms and ideas, your research question. All of this is going to be in your introduction. You're also going to convince your reader that this is valuable. You want your reader to read this to the end. So why is your paper important? Why is it worthwhile? It's kind of like, in technical words, it's a justification, but in real life, you're trying to convince your reader to go until the end. And how are you going to, develop your arguments? How are you going to support it? Are you going to use theory? Are you going to use the survey results? Are you going to combine? So all of this is in your introduction. Curiously, the first part that we read as a reader is the introduction. As a writer, it is the last part that you write, basically, because you will only be ready to write your introduction after you have developed it. How do you know the structure of your paper if it's not developed yet? So this is a trick that, if it's in the day that I heard this from my first teacher when I was, in high school, starting to write articles, and she said, "Oh, that the abstract and the introduction is the last part that you write." And I said, "What do you mean? It's the first thing I read as a reader." Yes, but as a writer, you're only ready to write your abstract and your introduction after you have developed it. So you have a little sketch of your introduction, but it's not ready yet. It will only be ready after you conclude your paper. So you go back to it, okay? The body paragraphs. So each paragraph or section, paragraph for an essay, for a research paper, covers one idea. So you're going to have one section to discuss the theory that supports your discussion. You're going to have another section to discuss the survey, another section to discuss results. So each section will have one idea only. Always you have to identify what is the logical order. So are you going to first start with survey results and then theory and then survey, or only theory and results? of a case study. So that will depend on what you're discussing. And of course, a supervisor will always help you tackle this better. As we write our first research papers, we're always in doubt. But then you will learn the scheme. You will find where do you want, what is your final goal? That the reader understands the procedures, that more important than the procedures are the results. So that's how you're going to then organize your paper. You're going to present and develop all your central arguments and, of course, the evidence in body paragraphs. So you have introduction, body paragraphs or sections, and conclusion. Okay? Nowadays, it's become very common not to use anymore the word conclusion, but final discussion or final arguments. Why is that? Because conclusion seems that it's ended. And in research, it never ends. So we usually now call it final arguments, or final considerations, or final analysis of that paper. That's why we call it final, and we don't call it anymore conclusion, because we really can't end a research basically anymore. The paragraph structure, you will follow an outline, or of course, the section. Use topic sentences. Always have, when I'm writing a paper, I have a thesis statement paper glued beside me so that I never forget what is my main goal. It's very easy to go off topic. And of course, effective transitions. So if I'm discussing the theory and the next step I'm going to discuss the procedures, I'm going to say that in order to develop the procedures, I was supported by the theory, this. When I'm ending my theory section, I'm saying, this theory supported how to apply and develop a case study in a certain context, this. So you always link what you conclude and connect it to the previous. This is really important so that the reader doesn't have to keep going back and forth, not knowing what he is reading. In the conclusion, you summarize your argument, you reflect on limitations. What happened during my research that limited? For instance, during COVID, this was a big thing. Many researchers had COVID as a limitation because if their papers were designed to do surveys or to do class analysis or whatever, they couldn't do it anymore. And they couldn't hold back in finishing maybe their article. So this was a limitation. Another limitation, for example, can be that you had predicted to use a specific number of students and then 3 students transferred. So what would be pair work ended up having to be 1 in 3 and the other ones in 2. So this could have changed the dynamic of how the tasks were developed because you had designed the tasks for pair work and suddenly you had a threesome. So that changed. So that was a limitation. Limitations are any actions that happen that kind of like go off rail, right? Or that impede you from completing it. So that's considered a limitation. It's really important to identify these limitations and to comment. It shows that you're a researcher, in fact, that you accept and you identify, what happened right, wrong, and even if you can suggest measures in order to avoid. For instance, from now on, when you prepare a task, pair work, always at the back of your mind, will this apply for a threesome? Right? So that experience of designing a task that was only for pair work and suddenly you saw yourself there having a threesome. So from now on, pair work. Does this also apply? Can I apply this for a threesome? So that's, and for 3 students, can it be done? And so always suggest areas for further research. What can be done in the future, that because as you're doing research, you identify problems and obstacles. And now based on these obstacles, so for further design activities for 3 students and not only 2, something like that. What are the obstacles that you faced? How can you overcome these obstacles? This will enrich your paper significantly. That's why we say it's not a conclusion, because you never stop. You never end, in fact. Always take the time to edit. I have a proofreader. Whatever I write, I have a proofreader, because I'm so focused on the content. I'm so involved that suddenly what seems so clear to me may not be clear to other people. I may be misusing a connector and I just don't see it because my mind is not exact. When I'm reviewing a student's paper, my mind is observing that. So that's why I have a proofreader, who in fact is my father, because he was a professor before me. So he's still active. So he's my proofreader. And so he will edit for grammar, for commas, semicolons, run-on sentences. These are the most common mistakes made when students are writing. Not necessarily in this order, but this is the most, they are the champions, okay? Now, of course, what are your problem areas? The first thing is to ask someone to review your writing and identify what are your problem areas. Because then, as a second plan, you can work on your weaknesses to improve them and not continue repeating the same weakness, the same mistakes. Always after your paper has been proofreaded, read it again. Be sure that any changes that were made are really, aligned with your idea, with your intention. So this is a little checklist that will help you. Does your paper fulfill all the requirements that the assignment asked for? Did you stick to the topic of the assignment? Are your sources credible, reliable, logical, clear, easy statement? Is your paper organized? Did you plagiarize? Oh my God, there are some sad stories. The Prime Minister of Germany, her name, I can't remember, she lost her title of PhD because she plagiarized. Can you imagine that? The Minister of Education, that was very sad. I mean, a very important person. And there are in several cases of high stake positions that people plagiarize. And nowadays we have a lot of resources to identify, so to identify if there is plagiarism. Now, plagiarism, we have to be careful because these software, you put there 8 words. So it's going to scan an article and identify 8 words that are available in other websites and other books and everything. Now, if we take a sentence such as students who dedicate time to doing extracurricular activities develop better cognitive skills. I mean, that's more than 8 words together. And it's not a theory. It's a sentence that I can write because it's so obvious, right? Students who dedicate time to extracurricular activities develop better cognitive skills. I mean, it's not groundbreaking. So even when we use this software, we have to be reasonable in what we consider plagiarism or not. This is not plagiarism, right? Because it's so obvious, isn't it? So then that's how the software, it is a help, but it's not a final decision on plagiarism. Is your paper formatted? Did you use like MLA? What format did you decide? And are you prepared to submit correctly? Is it by email? Is it on the platform? Be sure that you got it right. A little sketch. So in your introduction, it's going to be the research question, thesis statement. In the body, research results and arguments, conclusion, summary, key points and significance of the topic. These are very good sources. Citation Generator, this is such a great help because then you define what citation you're going to use and you put in the name of the book, and the system does it beautifully. Okay? APA, and this is a very good YouTube channel. I'm going to send this just to be sure. Ida, you're responsible. I'm sending it to your email. Will you forward it to the other students?
I
Very
definitely do the writing and this one. Sorry,
Yeah.
about the other email. Okay, sure.
There you go. Now, we're going to go to Canvas to see your topics that you have here. There are 4 topics here. Just grab this. There we go. So on Canvas, when you go to Canvas, you will find it as the final research paper. It's in assignments, okay, right here. And you have all the details that you need here. So A, B, C, D. These are 4 topics that are proposed. Now, of course, this is a big general one. From this big idea, you're going to narrow it, you're going to chunk, you're going to, find a path for you, because it's just so broad. Look at this: teaching English to children of native speaking families. So, I mean, the context, this can be so broad, right? This is so broad. Now, of course, most likely you're going to use like TPR maybe to develop it, or you're going to, in fact, discuss problems. You can discuss either how to apply problems that are identified in this age group. So define an age group and what kind of problems can you face. For example, when I used to teach kids, I used to find one of the age groups that was one of the most difficult was 7 to 9, because at 7 they were learning to write their mother tongue, and at the same time they wanted to teach them to write English. So it was a big conflict in their mind. They really struggled a lot. So wouldn't it be better to continue at this age yet without writing? Reading maybe, oral, but is it compatible to teach writing of 2 languages at the same time? For instance, if they don't know any writing. So that was a discussion that I had a lot. At the time I wasn't yet into, writing articles. It was teacher training. But nowadays, if I were teaching this age, I would definitely write an article about this. So once again, or how to teach children one of the best methods, or discuss the difference between direct method and TPR. That would be another way. So there are so many ways that you can develop this. So once again, it's a big topic, but certainly you can go back to Piaget. You can use Piaget to support how children learn, and then justify the usage of TPR or direct method. So the methodology is this, but there are other elements that influence the choice of it. Now, this one is interesting. Teach English to non-native English speakers. This is very common. So here in Brazil, this is my context. I teach English to non-native English speakers, right? In Canada, when I was a teacher, I was always a teacher of English as a foreign language. I would teach English to immigrants and refugees. So that was my world. So now look at this, living in Korean, Chinese. When I was in Montreal teaching English as a foreign language, it was one context. Nowadays in Brazil that I teach English as a foreign language, it's a different one. Do the same methods apply? Does the learning process, is it the same? What changes? What doesn't change? I can do a comparison study. I can discuss only one. I can think of how to develop this. Because if you imagine, in this context here, you have one reality. You have a common language to use in the classroom. in Canada, when I was teaching English, I did not, the only common language was English that nobody spoke, but I did not speak the languages of the students. I don't speak Korean, Chinese, and other language. So in the classroom, there were foreign language students from several, backgrounds and no common language. Does this change? Of course, but how? Why? Why does it change? So that's something that you can consider. You can also talk about business English, IELTS, TOEIC. So my paper was on IELTS. I decided to work with IELTS. Now, the third one is elaborate on the development of English Foundation as primary learning establishments to foreign speakers that intend to learn writing and reading in English for academic purposes. So you're going to teach someone who wants to learn English either to study abroad, to take one of those, proficiency exams, to study abroad. It's all about academic purposes. Is it a different approach? Definitely, it's a different approach. So then, you have to design a different class, design a different approach. You're not going to design a different approach, but you probably won't use the same approach to teach business English as you will to teach TOEFL, right? So, and then this is a very nice one, the link. So Daniel did his paper on this. His paper is fantastic as well. I will share my paper with you now in just a few minutes. So elaborate on teaching ESL in Canada to immigrants and international students. Compare the LINK program introduced by the federal government to other immersion and intensive programs used in language schools or colleges across Canada. So for example, ILSC and other schools. Now, Daniel did a very, deep analysis in the LINK documents. He got the documents provided by the federal, it's all online, of course, because it's a federal government, it's a federal project, so it's all available online. And he analyzed the purpose, he analyzed outcomes. It's a very nice paper, okay? Let me just briefly show you my paper, and there are several papers available. Yeah, before I move on, hold on. So there is the manual, and then here there are several, the guide and sample. So you have here research sample that you can analyze from former students, okay? Here, posing the question how to, so all of this, it goes, in the steps that we just mentioned, step by step. I highly encourage you to go posing the question. Out of all of these, this is the most important, because I know that you guys don't have too much time, which I understand 100%. Now, before you choose your topic, be sure that you analyze carefully, go through each one and identify which one do you feel that you are more competent in, that you feel that you are prepared to discuss.
Are you ask me or Ada?
Sorry.
Oh no, okay. My voice is not my
Yeah,
my
today your voice is
Wi-Fi
not,
is no good.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
It's okay. Here we go. So this is my paper. So it was academic learning IELTS, in-campus and online teaching, writing and reading methods for foreign students. So then I start. This is my little skeleton, right? So English for academic purpose and overview, then reading for IELTS academic, writing for IELTS, conclusion and bibliography. So I start here, the introduction. So I'm going to describe where this is going to happen, everything comes here. This paper describes writing and reading methods applied for foreign students preparing to take IELTS. So it's all here. The criteria, see, always using, you know, the Common European Framework as your discussion point. And then it seems like I just ran out of battery right now for my mouse. Here. I'll go without it. Here we go. So then I go part 1, which is the overview. Okay, so then I describe, I write about English for academic purposes, and then I narrow it down to Brazil because this is my research, you know. I use references, Jordan. So I go with references that support my position of academic teaching. And now I define, I go with documents. So below are the parts for reading. The information is available in the British Council IELTS website. So to identify what is the reading test and how I'm going to break it down and develop with the students. So first I have to show what is so they have to fill in gaps, they have to complete sentences. So what are the strategies that I'm going to apply? I'm going to apply skimming and scanning, identifying keywords, identify paraphrase, and then what is additional? What else will I do with them to help them be better prepared and overcome this task? We're also going to have to work with vocabulary, time management, reading speed. So, but for me to find this, I did a needs analysis with them. So based on the needs analysis, I identified the additional strategies that I would have to work on. So then that's what I explained this here. And then I explain how it was developed. And this is every week we did a mock test, and then how they progressed, you know, after applying the strategies, after developing the strategies, the results that they got. So it's also based on statistics to support my choice of approach. This was one way that I could justify that it's valid. Then I go with writing, the same thing. I look at what is the criteria. Based on the criteria, I do a needs analysis on my students. I identify what they need and how they're going to, you know, develop it. I decided to go with task 1 because I find task 1 very challenging, which is that they have to describe a chart. And then I made up a checklist to help guide their writing. I found that having a checklist could be helpful to organize their writing. So it's an approach that I like to use, our checklists. I find that checklists are helpful. And then I go to writing task 2 and how I developed it. And then my conclusion. So this is a case study, what in a specific group, how I developed, because that group, I did a needs analysis. I identified that they had weak vocabulary. The reading speed was very slow. So as I identified that, we targeted the weaknesses, and then we started to do, so from March until July, we worked on weaknesses, building skills. From then on, we only did mock tests and we would catch up on their problems. So once identified the problem, they would have to go back and only work on that element. So if they had done vocabulary mistakes, go back to your vocabulary, learn how to analyze vocabulary, use prefixes, suffixes, you know, cognitive words. So all of the strategies applied. I will share this with you guys too. And I'm sure that Daniel, when he meets you guys, you guys will meet Daniel on Monday. I'm sure that he will share. If he doesn't, ask him. His paper is, you will love his paper. Okay?
There's something
So-
else you were supposed to send me. Sorry, Anna. You sent me in the beginning of the class, you know, the writing that we were supposed to write the conclusion, but I didn't get any after that. You said,
Yeah, no, I'm going to, because I wanted to send also my research paper together.
thank you.
Okay? So now what is the first step? Go and read the 4 proposals. Analyze carefully. Which one do you feel that you can? Next class, when we come back, you can start asking questions saying, Anna, on this topic, can I go this way? Can it be that way? Okay? So we will have a question and answer moment to get started, to clear up, but take a few, 30 minutes, read, give yourself, make some notes, scribble down something, and then see. For example, okay, if you have never taught IELTS nor TOEFL, that's not the way to go. Just don't go there. It's a dark area for you guys. So, and it doesn't matter. There are so many other possibilities. Okay. So are there any other, points that you would like to discuss?
You know, when I was looking at your, writing, I felt that I cannot do it. I'm not going to
Of
do
course
that.
you can. You
It
can,
was
trust
so
me.
professional.
No, everyone can do it, and I will help. So don't worry. And that's another thing that's important. Now that you guys are at the beginning, don't worry about taking a paper that you feel, oh, this structure is good. Here, this is going to be my introduction. I have done that. We all have. We learn. It's like, how did you learn to make rice? Right? I saw my mom do the rice, then I did it once, I burned it, then I tried again, and then I went and I asked my mother to do it again. Oh, mom, how do you do the rice? So it's natural, it's a procedure. Don't worry about, looking at a structure and say, oh, this is what I want to do. And of course, you're not going to copy the paper, but you can copy the structure, because that structure most likely came from was inspired by another, that was inspired by another. Okay?
Okay.
In my opinion, I'm concerned a lot about I have not any experience to teaching new method used the new method, and I don't have any evidence. I didn't use to the new method, so totally I don't have any experience.
So
This is
your paper
problem.
can be based, no, your paper can be based on theory comparison. So for instance, you can compare what authors TPR and direct method. So what are the benefits? So you can discuss like this: benefits of using the TPR to teach children, right? So what are the benefits from that? Why is TPR beneficial? And then once again, you can use several authors. Instead of having a real case situation, you do an analysis and compare what the literature presents. So you don't need, it doesn't have to be necessarily a case study. It can be developed based on literature. You can say, okay, so this author says X, the other author says X plus Y, and the other author says Y. So there are different perspectives. And then at the end, you can kind of like identify or find, a final comment that in order to develop this probable, path could be using the point of view from author A and author B, because they correspond and they have, they are connected. But maybe author X you would have to consider as not compatible with the other two. So once again, you can do that very easily. You don't necessarily have to have a real case situation. Okay, Eileen? It can be a literature review, we call it.
I can try my best.
Yes, definitely. And I'll help you, of course.
Imagination. Okay.
One of the first steps that can also help you is going to Google Academic or Google Scholar that it's called, and trying to do like this, literature review for English teaching. Or are you going to do your paper on English or not?
Japanese.
Japanese.
I will.
So then you go, literature review, teaching Japanese for children. And you're going to see that then you will have some articles to inspire based on literature review.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So that's my first suggestion. Google Scholar, it's a very good source, very reliable. So you can go there and try to find a few articles just for you to start, to understand what is a literature review article. A literature review article has these characteristics. Okay?
Okay. So could you give me the website link to me?
Yeah, you just go
article?
to Google and you type in Google Scholar. In Google Scholar, it opens up and then you put in there, okay, literature review, teaching Japanese to children or to non-native English, something. And then, you will see the format of a literature review article.
Okay.
Okay? If you have any questions, please reach out. Next week, once again, we always have the question and answer session. So once again, let me know if you have any questions. Ida, how you feeling? Good?
Yeah, a bit confused, but yeah. If I start doing that, I feel better. Before that, it's frightening for me.
It is. But trust me, you have done the MOOC, you have done the conversation. Now you're ready. You're more than ready to do the research paper.
I hope so. Thank you.
You guys have a lovely week. I'll see you guys next Monday.
Thank you.
Wednesday.
You're gonna
Yeah,
send me the email, yeah?
Yeah, I'm doing that right now. I'm putting it together.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye
You
bye.
too. Bye.
Bye.